Shabbat Shalom to everyone. You know, when the wall is down in the sanctuary, everything looks kind of different. But we filled up the congregation tonight. Olivia, you're very popular. I mean, the people don't even know you who are here to see you. That's how popular you are. Is that possible? Okay. And I want to give a report on my mental and physical health after babysitting my 3 Israeli grandchildren for 2 weeks. Zoe is 7, very outspoken young lady. Amitai is a 4-year-old young man, and Shaya is a 1.5 young man. And I hope that during my 2 weeks of babysitting them, all the congregation was praying for me. Now, here's the background for those of you who don't quite know what I was doing there. My daughter, Leora, just became a rabbi, and she has a fellowship to be in the United States, to be involved in the congregation for 2 weeks. So my son-in-law in Israel really has 2 jobs in one company. It's very complicated. So I said he can't have 3 kids and Leora being away for 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. And I volunteered, I'll come. I'm not looking for any applause or anything. I certainly deserve it. No. So here are some of my experiences. Picking up Zoe and Amitai from school, taking them to get ice cream. Now, how Israelis kids get ice cream is, I don't know, maybe it's different in the United States. I spend more time with Israeli grandchildren than with other kids going to ice cream. So anyway, there's an ice cream chain in Tel Aviv called Golda's. And so my very aggressive granddaughter and grandson go in and basically ask a tasting of every one of the ice creams. And then they have a yogurt sundae. That's an Israeli style. That's an Israeli child. Amitai was morphing between Fireman Sam and Spider-Man and making sure every night that I had to have the right pajamas on him, reflecting which identity he wanted to assume that evening. Making lunch for my granddaughter Zoe each morning and not being able to get a straight answer what she wanted. But this is my favorite memory. Last Friday night, we made Shabbat dinner. I decided that I was doing the cooking, and I'm not a bad cook. So I made salmon, I made potatoes, and I made some vegetables. So we sat down, we made kiddush, we make motzi, the food is served, and then Zoe begins to eat and announces, this food has no taste to it. And then, of course, Amitai agrees. But my wonderful 1.5-year-old, Shai, is stuffing his face with his hands, so I had a great time in Israel. Candidly, I did. But as I was enjoying Israel and its wonders, which is really an incredible country, Israel was going through a very stressful period of time. And I don't know how much, I'm obsessed with following Israel politics and news all the time, and I don't know how much filters through the local newspapers, not very much, and depending on what your interests are, some of the things don't come through. But let me tell you, Israel is a very difficult situation. There are protests in downtown Tel Aviv every night of 100,000 people. And that would be equivalent in the United States to be 4 million people gathering, protesting the new government's laws that will change the Supreme Court so that the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, would be able to override any judicial decision with a majority vote, basically destroying the Supreme Court and all the checks and balances in the Israeli government. I can't get into all the details of it, but it's a very grave situation for Israeli democracy. And then With this very serious legal, political background, something horrific happened last Sunday in Israel, which has never happened in Israel ever before. And is really a very ominous sign. I've spent my entire rabbinic career defending Israel. Because sometimes I feel Israel is not given a fair shot, is sometimes not given a fair shake in society. But defending Israel doesn't mean defending the indefensible. This is what happened. Let me describe it the best I can. Double tragedy. 2 Israelis were murdered on Sunday in a terrorist shooting in a Palestinian city in a northern West Bank. And the victims were brothers Hillel Menachem and Yigal Yaakov Yaniv. And Hillel just completed his service in the Israeli Navy. Terrorists used a car to ram into an Israeli vehicle that was driving through the city, and then the 2 passengers were shot 22 times point blank. The terrorists escaped, and this is evil. It's evil. I know people don't want to use the word evil. I think certain things are just evil. That's evil. It was a horrible event, and these terrorists are being pursued by the Israeli military, and hopefully they will be brought into justice and punished. And unfortunately, this happens too frequently. But what happened later is unprecedented. West Bank Israeli settlers from the area streamed into this Palestinian town and began torching homes and even shooting at Palestinian civilians. And this was a pogrom, a Jewishly executed pogrom. A Palestinian civilian was killed, and 100 innocent Palestinians were injured, and a total of 100 houses were damaged or burnt down. 15 vehicles were torched, all by Israeli settlers. Israel's security forces rushed to the scene to help evacuate the Palestinians trapped in the burning homes as the settlers continued their rampage throughout the town, surrounding areas, torching dozens of buildings and vehicles. And why the Israeli military didn't stop the settlers altogether is another question altogether. But let's state it very clearly. And this is something I don't want to talk about, and I wish I didn't have to talk about it, but I would be disingenuous to the community, to the congregation, to all of you who gather here, to not really tell you what I feel about my experiences that I experienced when I was in Israel. Let's be very clear. Here was a pogrom caused by Jews against innocent Palestinians. I want that to sink in. Statements were made all over all the political parties denouncing this vigilantism. Yet Financial Minister Bezalel Smotrich called for the state of Israel to wipe this Palestinian town off the map. How do we understand people like this? Most of them who call themselves so-called religious Jews. Our portion this week helps us. Now, tomorrow morning, Olivia, in the most beautiful way, and I'm being very serious, will read to us a certain section. She's going to read a bunch of sections from the Torah, but the last section that she reads is about Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat of remembrance, when we remember what the Amalekites did to Israel as they came forth out of Egypt. And Olivia will read this portion, and let me just read it to you in English quickly. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how undeterred by fear of God he surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. Amalek was an evil tribe that went after the Israelites as they came out of Egypt. And then it says, therefore, when your God grants you safety from your enemies around you, when you're in your own land, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Don't forget. The question is, what does it mean to obliterate the memory of Amalek? There are no Amalekites in the world. Do you meet Amalekites at the supermarket? I mean, there are no Amalekites in the world. There's a Hasidic Rebbe named Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Meir Bedichev, who was an incredible interpreter and teacher of Torah centuries ago. And Rabbi Yitzchak pondered, how can we maintain such a strong revulsion, blot out the memory of Amalek to a people that no longer exist? And Rabbi Yitzchak suggested something that is so profound and relevant for what I just spoke about. He said, remember what Amalek did to us, and blotting out his memory are only part of the obligation. It also applies to us. And here is what he says. Each and every individual among the Jewish people is mandated to wipe out the evil portion of his personality that is called Amalek, that is hidden in his heart. And as long as the seed of Amalek is found in the world, there exists the reality of Amalek as a cause of the power of evil in each person. This power continually awakens anew to cause a person to sin. And this is precisely why the Torah reminds us, remember what Amalek did to you. So what is he saying? There's potential evil in all of us. No one is pure. None of us should think, well, I don't commit evil, another person commits evil. What Rabbi Levi Yitzchak is saying is the potential for doing evil, doing terrible things is in all of our hearts. And we have to be constantly vigilant against it. All of us, including the Jews, have potential for doing heinous things. And we must battle that instinct continuously. That is the battle against Amalek. In this case, the settlers' fury and anger against two innocent Israelis being murdered becomes lawlessness and revenge. And there is a leader of one of the Orthodox groups in our country who made a very poignant statement where he said, how can such a thing happen? How could it come to this that a young Jewish young men should ransack and burn homes and cars? We can't understand this profound anguish as the horrific murder of young and dear friends. We can appreciate the frustration with ongoing attacks on Jews and the lack of decisive and effective armed response, but we cannot understand or accept this. Attacking a village does not deserve to be called taking the law into your own hands. This is not the law. This is undisciplined and random fury. And what he goes on to say is, those who commit acts of terror and violence, it must be absolutely condemned. And absolutely condemning and decrying indiscriminate violence committed by Jews against anyone, anywhere. There's never any right among anyone, especially the Israelis, to do anything that would be immoral, illegal, or violent, and anything that's done that way has to be purged, has to be repressed, has to be rejected. Now, this is the frightening reality of the times we live in. Because what happens in Israel, I think, reflects upon all of us. There's a tradition that says we are rachamim b'nei rachamim. We are compassionate children of compassionate parents. And when Jews commit pogroms, all that we stand for is desecrated. Everything that we believe in the Torah goes out the window. It undermines our Jewish moral credibility and the sanctity of our tradition. Causing pogroms is not what Jews are about and can never be about. And if it is, then we have become the enemy. We have become our enemy. We've become our own enemy. We have become, therefore, Amalek. And then we have lost our souls. God forbid that we ever allow that to happen. Shabbat shalom.